on CalWORKs 2. Okay, let's get started. Welcome to Transforming CalWORKs, building on CalWORKs 2.0 and CalOAR. I'm Stuart Oppenheim from CFPIC, and I'm here to welcome you, do a little bit of housekeeping, and kick it over to our subject matter expert. So, as you're coming on, everybody should be muted, and please keep yourself muted if you can. We've got a large turnout today, which is really exciting and rewarding. That this, I think you'll all be pleased that you're here, and we'll also be recording today's event and sharing both the PowerPoint and the recording and the responses in the breakout meetings with everybody who is registered. So, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat to collect those. Please don't either raise your hand or come off mute. Again, in a large meeting like this, it's difficult to make sure that we get through the presentation without undue interruptions. So I know you're all really good about following instructions. So if you can, again, use the chat for any questions or comments. And with that, I'll do a little bit of an agenda review. So we're doing the welcome and introductions. We'll have one more welcome, and then move into the presentation. We'll do a little bit about the CalWORKs program evolution, CalOAR and CalWORKs 2.0 refresher, connecting the dots, breakout group discussions, which should be robust and really rewarding for all of us. We'll do a little bit of a report out and a wrap up and adjourn. But before we get into the main event, I'd like to have Lisa Witchie from CDSS do a bit of a formal welcome to all of you. So Lisa.
Great, thank you, Stuart, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Witchie with the CalWORKs program at the Department of Social Services. And I just want to briefly recognize that counties have really led the way by integrating practices and tools that reflect an understanding of trauma and the impact of poverty, and the impact that those things have on executive functioning skills like decision making, which can be really challenging for the participants in the CalWORKs program. And so through CalWORKs 2.0 that you all have really developed and led and practiced, you're already using tools like goal-oriented planning and roadmaps. The intent of this webinar is to really lift up the excellent work of CalWORKs 2.0 and show how that connects to CalOAR and really sets the foundation for the efforts that we are all taking part in to further transform CalWORKs by deepening how we engage and coach families so that they can transform their lives in ways that are meaningful for them. So I'm very excited to welcome Noelle Simmons with Public Minded Consulting and our partners with CFPIC as well to share this content with us. And then glad that we will have time to have some interaction too. That really deepens, I think, and makes the content more meaningful for everyone. So with that, I'll pass it over to Noelle, and thank you so much for making time to be here today.
Okay, okay, yeah, I don't know what, Noelle, you want me to do the goals?
Go ahead. Thanks, Stuart.
Okay. A little bit about what we hope to do today is look back at how CalWORKs has evolved over the years, where it's headed today, provide a bit of a refresher on the state-led CalOAR and county-led CalWORKs 2.0 initiatives, and reflect as a group on what we've learned from CalOAR and CalWORKs 2.0 program improvement efforts, and how those learnings can help drive successful implementation of transforming CalWORKs moving forward. And Lisa already introduced Noelle, and I will just add that many of you may know her from her work in San Francisco. So she is truly a subject matter expert on CalWORKs 2.0. She helped lead the statewide efforts as well. So with that, I will kick it to Noelle.
Thank you so much, Stuart and Lisa, for that introduction. And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be here this afternoon. And it's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. So, as we get started here, I thought it would be fun to kick us off by just taking a very brief look back at the CalWORKs program over the last 3 decades so that we can all really just appreciate how the current set of transforming CalWORKs reforms fit into the larger evolution of the program over time. So let's go to the next slide. As many of you know, the CalWORKs program launched in 1998 following the adoption of the Federal Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunities Reconciliation Act, which replaced the old AFDC program with the TANF program that exists today. The early CalWORKs program was very much a compliance-driven program and had a strong work-first orientation. In its implementation, California paired that federal focus with a strong commitment to supportive services for participants, including education and training, childcare subsidies, mental health and substance abuse services, and domestic violence services. Over the following 20 years, a number of additional program enhancements that were intended to reduce participation barriers and meet family needs were built out, including the expanded subsidized employment program, family stabilization case management services, housing supports, diaper benefit, home visiting services, and the OCAT assessment tool was launched with the goal of better tailoring program interventions to family needs. 10 years ago in 2016, as Stuart mentioned, the counties initiated CalWORKs 2.0, which was a culture change and program improvement effort that we're going to be doing a deeper dive on in a few minutes. And so I'll just leave it at that for now. Around the same time in 2017, the state, in collaboration with counties, launched CalOAR, a data-driven program management approach that we will also take a closer look at in just a moment. So here we are, almost a decade after CalWORKs 2.0 and CalOAR first began, and today the state and counties and other partners are poised to implement Transforming CalWORKs, a new round of reforms adopted last year through SB 119 and SB 146. This new set of reforms really do build off of those previous program improvement efforts in order to advance a family-driven model and bring more strategic cohesion to the program. These reforms are also informed by participant voices. They are statutorily mandated, and they are being paired with implementation supports for the counties. So with that overview in mind, the next segments of the presentation are going to go into a more detailed refresher on two of the more recent program improvement efforts, CalOAR and CalWORKs 2.0. Next slide. Okay. So for some of you, these upcoming slides are really going to be going over material that you already know well, but we wanted to acknowledge that others may be relatively new to the CalWORKs program, or perhaps are in a county that never really implemented CalWORKs 2.0, which was a county optional effort. Regardless of your background, the goal of this portion of the presentation is to level set so that we all have a shared understanding of what has come before, and also to prompt some reflection about the successes and the limitations of those prior efforts to help guide our thinking about the Transforming CalWORKs reforms that will soon be implemented. Next slide, please. As I said a moment ago, CalOAR is a data-driven program management approach that was legislatively mandated, meaning that statewide county participation is required. CalOAR consists of 3 core components. The first was the establishment of a robust set of performance indicators to replace what until that time had really been a fairly singular focus on the work participation rate, or WPR. The second 2 components comprise a set of continuous quality improvement practices, CQI, that occur on a 5-year cycle. There is a county CalWORKs program self-assessment, which is fairly self-explanatory, and then a CalWORKs system improvement plan, CalSIP, that each county develops based on the findings of its own assessment, and which also includes a peer review component. CDSS is contracting with the University of Chicago to conduct an analysis on statewide trends and learnings from the first 5-year CalOAR cycle. The researchers will be analyzing some quantitative data, the performance indicators, as well as the county self-assessment.
Oh, Noelle, you muted
You're on
yourself.
mute.
Uh-oh, did that
There,
just happen? I'm not sure what happened there.
there you go. I hear you now.
Okay. I'm not sure where I cut off, but the University of Chicago assessment should be done later this year. They are not necessarily gathering qualitative data on the county implementation experience. And that's why the sort of feedback in forums like today's webinar is going to be important to help us round out the understanding of how this work is really going on the ground. Next slide, please. So there are over 24 CalOAR performance indicators, and in bold font on this slide, you are seeing the 5 indicators that counties most often chose to focus on in their system improvement plans during the first cycle. Bulleted underneath are some of the most common program improvement strategies that counties have been employing. So just to quickly review these, the most often targeted indicator was the participant engagement rate. And counties deployed strategies, including strengthening their partnerships with internal and external partners, improving outreach and communications, improving data tracking and data accuracy, ensuring equitable service delivery, and formalizing and expanding training opportunities. The second most common target indicator was the orientation completion rate, and common strategies used here included expanding the accessibility of orientation through options like virtual orientation, or making transportation support available, improving marketing and outreach efforts, bringing an equity lens to the orientation delivery approach, adding language options and so forth, and increasing incentives for participants to complete orientation. The third most often targeted measure was the OCAT appraisal completion rate. Strategies there included revising the orientation to improve service delivery through simplifying processes and scheduling and so forth, implementing solutions to reduce participation barriers, developing trainings for both staff and participants, issuing policy guidance to staff, and increasing incentives for participants. The fourth indicator commonly targeted was the sanction rate and attempting to drive that down. Counties customized outreach and engagement to participants, focused on making welfare to work activities more accessible, and focused on staff training and education. And the final indicator on this slide was the first activity attendance rate. Counties here commonly worked on improving workshops and training materials for staff and program participants, customizing outreach and engagement to different subpopulations of participants. So these are just some examples of the type of work that has been happening in counties as a result of CalOAR over the last few years. A couple of things that strike me looking at this slide, first of all, are the extent to which counties are developing strategies not only to support program participants, but also to support staff's ability to deliver high quality services. And secondly, many of the strategies do seem at least notionally able to support improvement on multiple measures at the same time. So for example, a push to make more service offerings available online in an effort to improve engagement is also likely to help improve the measures related to orientation and OCAT completion rates. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. This next slide highlights some themes that were culled from the first set of progress reports that counties submitted to the state last year. On the left-hand side, we see some common challenges that were reported, including budget cuts and staffing reductions. When they were setting their SIP goals, many counties relied on having more funding to implement these new strategies or being able to staff up to advance their program goals. But in many cases, the reality turned out to be that budget cuts hindered the ability to do that, as well as to expand services and incentives for clients. Staffing limitations were due not just to budget cuts, but also just to high vacancy rates due to promotions and retirement and other types of staff turnover. The other types of challenges highlighted by counties were related to data. So sometimes the issue was insufficient data, particularly in smaller counties that struggled with smaller data sets to really be able to analyze that data and make meaningful conclusions, particularly for subpopulations of participants in measuring their progress towards SIP goals. And then, particularly in the early part of the cycle, there were some delays in the accessibility of the data for counties, and that data lag made it difficult to use the data to make real-time decision making. That challenge has been addressed somewhat by the CalSAWS preview report, which became available earlier this year and now gives counties a little bit more access to more real-time data. On the success side of the ledger, counties reported that outreach had been a success. Many who focused on expanding their outreach resources found that it really had a high payoff. Some counties redid their entire marketing campaign for the program and developed new resources for both clients and for staff. Staff buy-in was another bright spot that was noted by counties. Staff appear to like the kind of CQI nature of the work and feel inspired when they're able to actually see evidence that change is occurring. The community of practice sessions and the peer review exercises were also lifted up as being valuable for counties. They have begun to make more peer-to-peer connections, are reaching out more frequently to peer counties for support with their CalOAR implementation. And the utility of these CQI practices has improved over time as people get used to using them. And then the final success that was lifted up was internal tracking systems. So many counties started CalOAR thinking they would rely primarily on the statewide data dashboard to track their progress, but came to realize over the course of the first cycle that having more refined, tailored, county-specific internal tracking tools was beneficial to support data-driven decision-making. And so many counties have developed their own ad hoc reports and progress tracking mechanisms. So that's just a quick overview of where things stand today with CalOAR. And we will turn next on the next slide to the CalWORKs 2.0 initiative. Okay, next slide. CalWORKs 2.0, for those who might not be familiar, was a sustained effort that was launched by the County Welfare Directors Association, CWDA, in 2016, and formal resourcing of the effort ended in 2022. The initiative design and the implementation support were led by subject matter experts at Mathematica Policy Research, who is continuing to support the new round of transforming CalWORKs reforms. And Mathematica really worked in close collaboration with county staff and leadership and other partners who had subject matter expertise. The CalWORKs 2.0 approach was informed by research that was quite novel at the time on the executive function of the brain and the effects of poverty-induced stress on self-regulation, evidence-based practices relating to goal setting and goal attainment in adults, insights from behavioral research, and implementation science. It's important to note that county participation in CalWORKs 2.0 was voluntary. This was not and never has been a statutory mandate, nor did counties receive additional resources to support participation. So the work that has happened here has really just been at county's own discretion. Next slide, please. So CalWORKs 2.0 really sought to shift the day-to-day practice of CalWORKs away from that compliance-oriented, more directive form of case management that had demonstrated somewhat limited success, and towards more participant-led case management focused on goal setting and goal attainment. 2.0 also promoted the adoption of a whole family approach, so not just focusing on the work of the participating adult, but on whole family thriving. The initiative supported this shift by embedding CQI practices in county organizations and by delivering tools and practices that could be used at multiple levels. And what I mean by that is that there were some tools that supported interactions between staff and program participants, others that supported interactions between supervisors and staff, as well as tools that supported organizational development for county agencies. Next slide, please. This slide is lifting up some of the hallmarks of the CalWORKs 2.0 approach. First, the approach was intentional and purpose-driven. What do I mean by that? The goal was really for program design, the service delivery approach, and the activities to all be intentionally structured to provide participants with opportunities to build those core capabilities that they need in order to manage adversity, succeed in an upward career trajectory, and balance the challenges of life, family, and work. The idea was really that each interaction between a county staff person and participants should reflect the program purpose by messaging that CalWORKs is here to help you set and achieve your goals. The approach was also participant-led. Families were to be supported to set individual goals that were meaningful and personally motivating to them, but also aligned with program aims and realistic given the family's unique circumstances, their strengths, and their challenges. The approach was also flexible. Instead of requiring, as we had in the past, that every participant do the same activities in the same sequence and at the same pace, this approach recognized that some participants are able to begin work-related activities right away, while others need time at the front end to resolve crises and address significant challenges before they can progress. The approach also realized that progress isn't always linear, that sometimes people would start work and then need to stop and restabilize and start again, and that was okay. And finally, the approach was iterative and self-reinforcing. The 2.0 framework relies on the idea that participants have success in a series of small steps, and that leads to better program retention and improved outcomes over time. For county staff, the hope was that the regular use of the 2.0 tools and framework would cause participant interactions to become more relationship-based and less transactional, while acknowledging that that was something of a culture shift that would take time to occur. All right, let's go to the next slide. So these next few slides highlight some of the key activities and resources that were developed through the 2.0 initiative. Again, this is partly to provide relevant context for people who are newer to CalWORKs, but it's also a reminder for those who are already familiar with 2.0 of some of the tools that still live online and are available for use and adaptation by counties. As Stuart mentioned, we will circulate a copy of the slide deck after the webinar today so that folks can access the links that are embedded in it. CalWORKs 2.0 included the development of the core practice model that I just finished summarizing. Additionally, an extensive suite of tools were created, which live online. Again, some of those tools were geared to frontline staff, and others were more geared towards county program administrators to help guide program planning, culture change, and CQI efforts. If you do poke around online, there is something called the Frontline Staff Guide and the County Level Guide, which are the best place to start to really get an overview of the 2.0 approach and how the various tools were meant to be used with each other. So going to the next slide, these are just a few examples of the frontline worker tools that were designed to be used by program staff when they were interacting with clients. Potholes and detours and the My Goal Plan Do worksheet at the top were goal-setting tools to be used by program participants. The Cal Map at the bottom right was intended as a kind of a user-friendly way that could be used to quickly identify family needs at intake or at other follow-up meetings, and then to gauge family progress in key domains over time. On the next slide, we have a few visual examples of program planning and administration tools that might be useful to revisit. Clockwise from the top, the county resource map was designed to make it easy for program administrators to identify how their program resource allocations aligned with program service priorities and community needs. The county self-assessment at top right was designed to help managers gain an understanding of how their current program implementation aligned with the vision of CalWORKs 2.0. This tool touched on really important environmental factors that are needed to support program success, including things like staff training and performance evaluations, partnerships with contracted service providers, and streamlined business processes. And then in the bottom right corner, the intentional service selection overview described the CalWORKs 2.0 engagement strategy, which was all about meeting customers where they were at, prioritizing activities based on customer needs, and achieving outcomes through client-based goal setting. Finally, bottom left, the Fidelity tool was a self-evaluation tool for counties to use to assess how their CalWORKs 2.0 implementation was going. Next slide. Over the course of the initiative, multiple trainings were held virtually and in person for county staff, and hundreds of people, over 500 people from 45 counties were trained in the early stages of the initiative. The 2.0 website contains recordings of a dozen virtual trainings that Mathematica hosted on topics like the foundational research that underpins the 2.0 approach, and strategies that counties can use to redesign orientation, keep families engaged, and drive culture change. One thing to flag as we are in this mode of thinking about lessons learned is that after Mathematica's engagement ended, the responsibility to provide ongoing staff training and support around the 2.0 practice really fell to the individual counties themselves. And some of the tools that are online were intended to support counties with that undertaking. But in retrospect, that may have been a shortcoming in that many counties may have been resource constrained and may have struggled to maintain those training efforts. In recognition of that shortcoming, CDSS will be partnering with UC Davis through the Transforming CalWORKs effort to develop professional trainings for CalWORKs program staff so that the learnings can be reinforced and sustained. Next slide. So this slide just talks briefly about the County Leadership Initiative, which was launched in 2021, so towards the end of the 2.0 initiative by Mathematica, and about 700 county staff were trained statewide. This leadership initiative was really driven by recognition of the fact that having a robust set of program activities and services for participants is necessary, but it's not sufficient to move the needle on participant outcomes. And that additionally, it's really critical to have, as you all know, a skilled county workforce and strong organizational leadership to maintain momentum. So this initiative involved trainings for supervisors and managers on topics such as strategic and visionary leadership, operational management, developmental supervision, and strategies to grow leaders of color. It included recorded interviews with CalWORKs leaders offering motivation and insights, and utilized design challenge sprints using a process improvement approach called Learn, Innovate, Improve, which was meant to help county staff practice the application of the training concepts and the CalWORKs 2.0 approach in real life. All of those training sessions and related materials are online and still accessible to county staff, excuse me. Okay, this slide here, next slide please, is just some links to other resources that were generated as part of the 2.0 work. Some of them may be a bit outdated at this point, but they include things like promising practices that were implemented at the time in counties, as well as some national research, evaluation, and best practices. All right, next slide. So that completes the look back at CalOAR and CalWORKs 2.0. Before we move into our breakout groups for a little bit of discussion, I wanted to just offer a few brief reflections on what we've learned from some of those two past initiatives and how those lessons learned are informing the current transformational work. Next slide, please. First, as is probably obvious from this presentation, there is really strong alignment between the goals and the underlying intent of the current transforming CalWORK reforms and those of CalWORks 2.0 and CalOAR. I know that in the field, we sometimes get reform fatigue, and it's like, oh, what's this new thing, this new flavor of the day? But I really do feel that this latest round of statutory changes that were adopted last year are not so much something new as a continuation and a reinforcement of the work that counties have already been engaged in. CalWORks 2.0 and CalOAR were envisioned to be ongoing and iterative program improvement efforts. One and done isn't really a thing in this work. A key part of both those initiatives was to help counties become practice in using data to identify areas for improvement, implement small pilots to test new strategies, and then measure the results and tweak the approach and go at it again. That iterative approach can be and should be used in implementing this new set of reforms as well. It is true that the culture change that those two prior efforts envisioned may not have fully taken root yet, or it may not have taken us as far as we hoped it would take us, or as far as we need to go. However, much of the groundwork that they laid was necessary and does have ongoing value and relevance and can be built upon as we move forward. I also think it's the case that the success of those prior efforts may have been limited by things that transforming CalWORKs can help now to address. And that gives us a fresh opportunity to really cement or more fully embrace the more flexible approach to program administration that CalWORKs 2.0 envisioned, and to drive improved family outcomes, which of course is the point of all of this. Next slide. So this is a busy slide. I apologize for that. The left-hand column is highlighting the key CalWORKs reforms that were adopted last year through SB 119 and 146. And then on the right side, I've highlighted how those reforms, which importantly are now codified in state statute, reinforce the voluntary CalWORKs 2.0 approach. I'm not going to read through this entire slide. You can kind of do that on the screen or at your leisure later, but I'll just speak to this first row as an example. When we launched CalWORKs 2.0 a decade ago, one of the things that we heard repeatedly was, yeah, it's all well and good to say that we want the program to be participant-centered. It's all well and good to say we want to meet families where they're at, but as long as counties are faced with the threat of fiscal penalty for not meeting WPR targets, then meeting WPR is always going to be what counties are going to focus on. And frankly, that was reasonable given the incentive structure that was in place at that time. But with the elimination of the penalty pass-through, what was a major barrier to embracing the vision of CalWORKs 2.0 is now removed, freeing counties to engage in a more intentional way with participants, still with the long-term goal of getting those participants to be stably employed and positioned to thrive. So I want to stress that it's not that the program goal has changed. The goal has always been for participants to become employed and for families to thrive. It's just that the statutory change has now aligned the incentive structure of the program to support the program goal. What this slide says to me is that while we may always have some differences of opinion about how exactly CalWORKs should be administered, there really is significant alignment in the vision for this program that is shared by CDSS, by the state legislature, by the counties, and by all of the other stakeholders who supported the transforming CalWORKs reforms. And that feels like a pretty great place to have arrived at. So with that, we are going to move momentarily into the breakout sessions, but just doing a quick time check here. Yeah, it is almost time for us to move to breakouts, but we do have 2 or 3 minutes. So I'm just going to check in with Donna and the others at CFPIC to see if there were any questions in the chat that we might want to try to address first.
The main question, Noelle, was around the slide, the PowerPoint. I want to make sure that's going to be sent to the participants here. And we said yes, and then we'll be sending also the Slidos. When we go into breakout, you're going to be providing information via the Slidos. If you haven't used it, you'll use it soon, and we'll be sending those out too. I didn't see any other. Did you, Juliet?
No, no other questions.
Okay, there will be time also for questions and discussions in the breakout session. So again, thanks so much everybody for joining us today, and I will turn it back over to Stuart.
Thank you, Noelle. That was an amazing overview of the foundational efforts that will support transforming CalWORKs as we move forward. So I think this was a perfect opportunity to hear about what have we done that supports what we're going to be doing. And it was great. We will, as Dana said, we're going to send out the PowerPoint, the recording. We will also be posting on our website. We're developing a resource hub, so we will put it there. And as we all move into supporting the implementation of transforming CalWORKs, there are a lot of tools there in the PowerPoint that were developed that we want to, again, build on, maybe adopt as we move forward. So great presentation. Thank you so much. I think everybody, I hope, really appreciates your thoughtful reflections and what they can do to help us move forward. So our intention for today was always to make this interactive. We wanted to start with a sort of a didactic overview, but we also want to make sure that you all have an opportunity to weigh in on what are your reflections based on what you just heard. So we're going to be moving into breakout groups. We have 3 questions, pretty long questions. We'll spend, I think we can do 30 minutes in the breakout group, so maybe 10 minutes per question. And you can see them here. You'll also see them there. You don't need to look at this or memorize it, but basically we want to know the extent to which culture change by CalWORKs and CalOAR 2.0 and CalOAR have taken root in your county. Our
Stuart,
county's prepared. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that you said 30 minutes. We have 20 minutes. We end at 3:30, correct? So
No,
we
I
have...
think we end at 4.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay. It's I think the calendar invitation got a little bit skewed for some folks, but no, we're good till 4. So that'll give us some time for report out. So how have these taken root in your county? Our county's adequately prepared to implement. And the most important thing that the state and TA partners can focus on to ensure that it's successful. So again, we'll repeat these in the breakouts. If you've been with us in the CalWORKs implementation collaborative meetings, you know, we use a process called Slido. That will capture all of your input, and we will be, when we get to next steps, we'll also talk about, we will get this information back out to all of you. So with that, unmute myself. Welcome back, everybody. I'm hoping all of the groups had as robust a discussion as we did. We're so much for us and for the folks at CDSS to consider as we think about ways to support you. So we're not going to do an extensive report out, just in the interest of time, and it's been a robust webinar, both in terms of the information we received as well as the conversation. But we'll do a little bit of a report out from our groups, and for each of the questions, we have one of our facilitators ready to provide their reflections, and then we'll piggyback on that if there are any things that they've missed. Yeah, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do with all the great responses. So, Juliet, I think you were going to tackle question number 1.
I am going to tackle the question number 1. I want to say first off, thank you to everybody who was in a breakout room number 6. You guys gave such great.
No, I think
You're on mute.
Look at me. I'm talking blah blah blah. And I'm thinking it was so, what I was saying was just stellar. I mean, so just so you know. No, I want to thank everybody who had provided input in breakout room 6. You guys gave great input. In question 1, when we talk about what extent the culture change has taken hold or not, right? What or what parts of these initiatives have taken hold. What was great was that we heard it was the culture change piece of it seemed to be what folks said took hold pretty well, that they really did change a focus on being more customer centered, on spending more time engaging clients. And then what we also heard was for counties, there were counties in the group that were part of the pilots, right? So in the counties where they were part of the pilot, it felt like we got some really positive feedback on the fact that a lot of this stuff took hold in the county because they were piloting it, right? We heard some various feedback about the forms are still in use today, and some that the forms are not in use because they're not required, right? So there's a little bit of disparity between those two pieces of feedback. That the tools were helpful in engaging clients, but that there's so many tools and so many forms as well. So it makes it challenging for workers to utilize all of them. Let's see, anything else? No, I think I really covered it all. I would ask if anyone was in my group if I missed anything really significant that we want to elevate about what aspects were successful and not didn't take, or which aspects didn't take hold. I did hear about UC Davis support, being part of the pilot, Mathematica support, the kinds of the counties that mentioned that they had some of that direct technical assistance and support as they were in training, as they were moving it forward, really did feel like that helped them to experience success and let some of these things take root in their counties. So that's something to build upon. And then I'll pass it to any of my other colleagues who had anything else that they thought would be really important to elevate from their breakout sessions.
So Juliet, I'll jump in just to say that when we talked about indicators of success, that counties pointed out the decrease in sanction rate. That was a significant indicator in a number of counties in our group. So that was the only thing I would add to what you said, and see if there are any other groups.
In our group, they mentioned really the flexibility of being able to offer different activities from the beginning. So not just job club and so yes, also a reduction in sanctions due to just a lot of flexibility. So using that as an indicator that things were that was a positive change.
I would say that there was a lot of the same discussions in the breakout room that I had as well, but they did mention, a couple people did mention that if they had implemented CalWORKs 2.0, that they felt like they were more ready for this because staff was already focusing on sort of engaging the families.
There was some sanction reduction. This one in particular county, and I just want to highlight it. They made significant progress in enhancing their engagement rate measure, achieving a 25.5% increase.
Wow.
They were able to establish a framework for tracking data through the CalOAR data dashboard provided by CDSS, supplemented with county ad hoc reports for an internal tracking system. So I just wanted to highlight that. Something that continued to come across in our group was they really, really needed more training. They had a lot of staff turnover through the years, and that continuous need for training kept coming. So I just wanted to highlight that as well.
In my group, they talked about more CDSS guidance and support and training as well.
Okay, and I think we sort of have drifted into number 2 a bit. So
That's what I was going to say. That was a hot topic on question number 2 for my group. So the need for training, clear guidance, and some clarity or some timely information regarding budgeting. So those were the primary things that they were needing to be able to say that they were adequately prepared to implement the changes. Yeah. So talking about a lot of the previous supports that they've had, but really a lot of worry about budget and staffing. And so those two things really wanting some more clarity on from the state.
Yeah. And it was similar in my group too. A couple of things that I thought that were interesting that, ideas that they floated is really they wanted some T for T is always beneficial. I like the idea of office hours for Q&A so that they could have someone to talk to. We're talking about question number 2 right now, right, Stuart?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one county mentioned that they have a hiring freeze, and so even if there were more money in the single allocation, I'm not sure they could even hire anyone. But again, clear guidance was really an important factor. We've been hearing that in the transformation team as well, wanting that out, and they want it out soon so they can start looking at how they might change their own material. And they don't want to make desk guides and then they have to change it again. So they think this as soon as the staff can get those draft ACLs out, they would really like them. Train the trainer came out really big. And important to have leadership support too for this work to embrace the changes that they're going to be undertaking in order to really be successful implementing the transforming CalWORKs. Anyone else from the group thought there was something else that they wanted to highlight?
No, I just think it's interesting, and I mentioned in our group how much the request for guidance, the request for information about both flexibility and
Mm-hmm.
what mirrors what we're hearing in the transformation teams and the
Exactly.
CalWORKs implementation collaborative. It was sort of great to hear the same themes because I think again our partners at CDSS would support. So others on number 2.
I just put it in the chat, but just automation came up quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And whether or not all of these new requirements or new processes are going to have an automation component with them and when that will be ready. So that came up.
Great.
I'll
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted
Please.
to uplift. There was a big theme about that clear guidance from CDSS as being needed. So just uplifting that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And then again, sort of drifting into number 3, what are the things that the state and TA partners can focus on to ensure that the reforms are successful? Again, we heard a lot in the other answers to the other questions, but Sharon, anything else that popped up?
No, the consistent message really was, what are the most important things the state and TA partners can focus on would be the training. And when Noelle asked a really good question, what kind of training are you looking for? Right. And so that question came up, but really bringing up that we're also hearing the same thing in our transformation teams, but training around interviewing, around soft skills, but also some training around how to use the new appraisal tool. Is that going to be something that you're going to offer? Is there going to be some guidance about how to use it, not just what to use? So those types of things came up. But really, again, just training and budgeting, really two very hot topics throughout all of our questions. So making sure those are lifted up.
Yeah, just to echo and build upon the appraisal tool, the group that I was in talked about an appraisal tool that migrates into CalSAWS if participants fill it out on another platform, and to ensuring that the tools, whatever that appraisal tool is, are useful in person, online, and over the phone. So really thinking about the modalities of how the new tool is going to be utilized, that it needs to be useful across all of those platforms. And I know that's something that's being considered right now. And then overall, just the clear guidance and ability to know what data they're going to be entering and be able to pull reports out of CalSAWS to show how they're doing on the transforming CalWORKs.
In my group, pretty much mirrored what you all said. I guess a couple of things that are a little different that was mentioned. I thought this was interesting is that, again, to sort of reiterate what you said, Juliet, is that CalSAWS really isn't built to support welfare to work. It's an eligibility system. So how will it support this new approach? They would like more scenarios and training. And I thought this was interesting too. I hadn't thought of this, that they wanted updated eligibility and assistance standards, regulations in parentheses, not just guidance letters, because that's what they work off of as the regulatory package, I guess. They suggested that CDSS maybe visit some counties and message this so line staff can hear that it's coming from the state. And asked also that any of the processes that they work closely with the counties, the process, the automation processes, the letters, that counties be brought in early on that work, because they're the ones that have to implement it, of course. And of course, we know that the transformation teams are giving information to the state, and so they're looking at that as they develop their ACLs.
Great. Yeah, and in our group, I just made a suggestion that we at CFPIC are talking about doing peer mentoring forums, and people seem to like that idea. But they want to, whatever, they would like some prep time. So being sure that we get stuff out in advance. So with that, I think, again, I'll just jump to our wrap up. Next steps really are, we have got a wealth of information that we just shared a bit of, but from each of our Slidos, we have your written comments. We'll spend a little bit of time consolidating those and getting them into a process that will allow us to share with you. So everybody who's on today will get, first of all, we'll get the recording and the PowerPoint out to everybody immediately or as soon as we can. But in terms of getting all that information consolidated, we'll take a little bit of time, make sure that it's not redundant, that it's helpful and useful for you. So we want to give you your information back. We'll share it with CDSS. I assume we'll probably share it with the Transforming CalWORKs Advisory Committee as well, because a lot of what you're saying addresses some of their concerns, but we'll talk to CDSS about that. So, and then one thing also that came up on the TA, and what's needed was maybe some more webinars. So we've already been talking to CDSS about what can we do to make today's event not a one and done, but to give you a series of opportunities to both hear about things that are being proposed, give your input, but also have some discussions, have some opportunities for dialogue. So a lot of next steps that we'll be mulling with our partners. And with that, we're pretty close to ending. I don't know if Noelle or Lisa would like to give us any final comments for today.
Thank you, Stuart. Lisa, again, I'll jump in real quick just to uplift Katie Clarkin's comment in response to the implementation date. I think that is top of mind for folks as we are inching closer and closer to July 1st. And as Katie noted, the implementation date is primarily contingent on automation. Most of the components of the reform change, the policy changes, do require automation. The one piece that does not is Job Club being optional. And so that is an item that we are currently drafting guidance on. We have a draft letter that's being vetted internally right now, and we hope to have that out for stakeholder feedback in March. And so that will take effect July 1st. And we are planning to host a webinar training on that topic specifically to support implementation. But the other components of the reform do require automation. And so the effective date will not be July 1st for those other components. So I just wanted to put folks' mind at ease on that. And we will use our upcoming CWDA hosted CAP meetings and CPC meetings and self-sufficiency to give more detail about the implementation date, timing of when the all-county letters will be released, along with training and implementation support that we'll provide. So thank you for uplifting that as a need from the department.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. And I thank you for making this opportunity happen. From the beginning of our work with CDSS, you've been encouraging us to find a way to share the information that Noel has put together. So thanks to you for making it all happen. And thanks so much to Noel. If we were in person, I would ask people to give a big round of applause, which I guess you can do with your computer thing. But great information, great dialogue. I've been so impressed with how engaged the counties are. And when we talk about implementation, we talk a lot about parallel process and the fact that we want our staff to engage with participants, but we also want to parallel that as organizations that CDSS creating opportunities for engagement with the counties. So great process. Really thanks to everybody. Noel, thanks so much for some wonderful information. Thanks to all of you for your participation, and we'll get you out 2 minutes in advance. So.